Hey everybody, going live here with Susan Chamberlain from the George Hull Center, a lady who's been working very hard over a long period of time to help families and their kids work their way through the world that we live in. There is the George Hull Center. I'm going to assume that that's actually where Susan is. Let me do that. Oh no. And now I just see Susan Chamberlain. I'm going to go there because I think maybe it's off of her personal. Let's hope we got the right handle. Looking forward to. Hi, Susan.
Hey, Pete.
Is this where you wanted to do it or on the George Hull handle?
No, I think this is good. This is fine.
Okay, awesome. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Happy Friday.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Although I have a sneaking suspicion in the world that you're in right now, as with many people, the day of the week doesn't really make a difference. It's just the day after yesterday and the day before tomorrow.
Yeah, that's a challenge for sure.
Yeah, I think a lot of things are running together these days, and that's part of the reason why I think it's important for us to have this conversation.
Yeah, totally.
Thank you for making the time, Susan.
Oh, my pleasure.
So, Susan, the way we start off is we do a little introduction to GenWell. We talk about why we're hosting the Connected Conversation series, and then we come back to give you the introduction you deserve as the person, and the work you are doing at the George Hull Center is truly amazing, and looking forward to talking about it. So if you'll give me 2 seconds, I'll come right back to you.
Great.
Hey everybody, it's Pete. The GenWell Project, which was launched in 2016, is a human connection movement, and our mission is to make the world a happier and healthier place by reminding people about the importance of face-to-face social connection, and more importantly, inspiring them to take action. We used to say we'd like to get you connected before the next crisis. Well, it's here now. So our goal now with the Connected Conversation series is actually to help people by connecting them to conversations with the right people, ideas, and tools that will help us cope, help us find solutions, and help us build the resilience that will help us get to the other side of COVID-19, and together make the world a happier and healthier place, one virtual contact at a time. A huge thank you to all our volunteers who helped put this on, and also to our partners, Molson Coors and JP Wisers, who are helping in the sustainability of our movement and helping us keep the lights on. So more on new partners coming up shortly, but the good news is we're here and having these amazing conversations with people like Susan Chamberlain. Susan Chamberlain, for those who don't know, Susan is the Executive Director of the George Hull Center for Children and Families, a comprehensive children's mental health center in Toronto, serving children from birth to age 18 and their families. Susan has over 25 years experience in the children's mental health sector, began her career working with children and families at Cavan Youth Services in Peterborough, before returning to school to complete her master's degree in social work at the University of Toronto. After graduation, she worked at the Hinks Delcrest Center for 9 years, primarily in the Rural Treatment Center as a family therapist, before joining the George Hull Center as the Director of Residential and Day Treatment Services, overseeing 2 adolescent residential treatment programs, a substance abuse program, and a day treatment program. She was appointed executive director in 2016. Susan Chamberlain, it's absolutely amazing to have you on here today, and thanks for making the time.
Thanks, Peter. That's a lovely welcome.
Well, you know, hey, there's a lot there, but when you actually see, you know, again, I think it's important for people to understand that not only do I know you personally and understand how passionate you are about this, but that, you know, this comes with a lot of knowledge and a lot of expertise in what you've done. And so I think the conversation, we've been doing this for about a month now, Susan, and I don't think we've really touched on families yet. And yet, you know, even with a young child myself, I know the stresses of homeschooling and trying to run businesses and trying to, and frankly, I feel like there's more meetings taking up the hours of the day, because now it is so easy to grab people onto a Zoom meeting or whatever. And the pressure and stresses of families, I think, are greater than they've ever been before. So, but before we get into that, Susan, we always want to start off by asking our guests is, how are you doing? because we all need to be checking in on each other right now because, we're all feeling the ups and downs of COVID-19. So before we get into what you do to help other people, we want to know how you're doing.
Well, thanks. I'm doing very well. I think I'm like most people dealing with working from home and parenting and dealing with having all of that in one place is super challenging. But you make the best of it, and I'm fortunate that I have a terrific team behind me at the George Health Center, so I feel really well supported in my work environment. And I have a child that's 13, and so she's a little out of the, she can manage a bit more on her own than those parents with young kids.
Yep.
And so I'm supporting her with her school, but I don't have to do it to the same extent that parents with younger children are doing. So I do, my heart goes out to people with little kids because I think it's, parenting is hard at the best of times. Parenting during a pandemic is unprecedented. I like to tell the story of I went for a walk at the beginning of this with my daughter. We were walking the dog and she said to me, I've never experienced anything like this in my life. And it just was kind of sweet because none of us have. Nobody. Yeah. Her 85-year-old grandfather has not experienced this. So it really is new to everybody who is walking this earth. And so we're all just doing the best we can.
Yeah, I think it's really powerful. We have had a few psychologists and happiness experts, or happiness psychology. We've had workplace mental health. And I think the common theme we've heard from everybody is we are all struggling right now in one way, shape, or form, even if it's coming to grips with the fact that we've never actually been through this before. And to give ourselves a little self-care and a little break on, we chatted with a high-performing female entrepreneur yesterday who struggled with the fact that she's not as productive as she used to be. Mm-hmm. It's like, you can't when the world is shut down. So, Well,
and we're all mourning different things, right? I mean, children are mourning the loss of their sports teams and their school friends, and their plans for the future are so uncertain. So, being a parent supporting that is really challenging.
Yeah, you've actually just described what we've done for the last month. We've had Christy Harold from the Toronto Sports Social Club. We've had Serena Condello, who is a creative arts person. We've had people from all different walks of life, because it does. And that lady yesterday was Julie Mitchell, was from a spin company that she owns. It's like, whatever your passion was that gave you that connection outside of the four walls of your home, those are the passions that we're missing, and trying to fill those gaps are obviously a challenge.
Yeah.
So is there one thing, Susan, that you've had to adapt to the most thus far? Because we're now, 8 weeks in. Is there anything that you've had to adapt to the most? And maybe tell us what you did to cope with that challenge that you might have been facing.
Well, one of my coworkers put it well. She said, we're not working from home, we're living at work. And I think that has been the challenge. Is I'm generally pretty good at maintaining a work-life balance, which I think is really important for all of us. And it's easy when you go to a physical space and you leave it behind and you come home and that physical space is no longer with you, so you're not in that mode. So when I would walk in the door of my house, I was a parent and not the executive director of the George Health Center, unless there was some real emergency that pulled me back into that world. And now it's a lot more difficult to manage that separation. So I guess for me, it's been trying to be a bit disciplined about how I manage that, and ensuring that I'm present enough for my child. I think that a lot of people feel like they're doing a crappy job at both parenting and their professional work is, and that's really a lousy way to feel. And so I think we need to be super forgiving with ourselves. I certainly am being pretty forgiving of myself for not being the best at everything, and doing my best to carve out some space for me personally, and to carve out some space for my family.
What I love about those comments, Susan, is just the fact that You know, you're supposed to be the expert. You're the person who does this for a living. You coach people, you support people. Oh, you mean like it's not perfect for you either?
Yeah.
You
No,
know,
it's not
I thought
perfect at all.
I thought you had it all buttoned down.
Yeah,
And I
I'll
think,
tell you, I mean, I think anyone who has become a parent knows that it is the most humbling experience you will ever have. It's the hardest job you'll ever have. It's the most responsibility you'll ever have. And none of us do it perfectly. Even if we advise people on how to manage it, doesn't mean that we're any better than anyone else. We're all kind of in this slog called, life together, and we all do our best, and we can all do better, and we can all give ourselves a bit of a break when we don't do the best.
yeah. If everything we planned worked out the way we planned it, it would be much easier. But
Yeah.
every day is a whole new ball game. The other thing I'll say, just there was a piece of research came out of Harvard this week that said the average employee is now working, I guess they not working 40% more productive. And it's basically that we're not taking breaks, we're not taking lunch, we're not separating work from home. And so no wonder the stress levels are growing. No wonder the anxiety is there. No wonder the frustrations are there and not getting that balance of time. So I think that's a quick, 8 weeks in, we're already seeing what the implications of not having those separations from work and family are having on people. So something for us all to keep in mind.
Absolutely.
So Susan, now on to the other hat that you wear, although I think you wear them both beautifully and understand it both from a parent and also as somebody who works at George Hall. Can you first off tell us a little more about the George Hall Center? How long has it been around, and really what are the services that you provide?
Sure. I love talking about the George Hall Center.
I love that.
It is a children's mental health center, and it's located in Etobicoke. And so we primarily serve the west end of Toronto, though not exclusively. And we have a bunch of different programs. We've been in business, I guess, as the George Hall Center for 35 years. And so we've grown over the years. And I guess that you could kind of break down our services into 3 general areas. So we have prevention and early intervention services, and that includes things like early on. We have a few early on locations. So if you're a parent with young children, you might have gone to an early on drop-in center. And so we have a number of those locations in the west end of Toronto. And we also have speech and language services for the really little kids that's a partnership with the City of Toronto and Toronto Public Health. And we do something called family group conferencing, which is a nice partnership that we have primarily with child welfare agencies, though not exclusively, to support families and the extended kind of concept of family into helping make plans for kids that are an alternative to coming into child welfare care. So those are just a very few of our prevention and early intervention services. There are many more. And then we also have our community clinic, which is essentially our outpatient department. And so that is family therapy, individual therapy, and group therapy programs. And we have quite a few group therapy programs. And most of those are offered at our location at 81 the East Mall, which is in South Etobicoke. Just actually, if you know where Sherway Gardens is, we're kind of kitty corner from them on the other side of the 407. And then we have our intensive treatment programs. And so we have 3 kind of parts to that. One is that we have day treatment classrooms. So we have 5 classrooms in 2 different schools, in the 2 different community schools, and they're very specialized classrooms. So you're looking at 8 kids to a class with 2 child and youth workers and a teacher supporting the class. For our younger kids, our high school age kids, you have 1 child and youth worker and a teacher supporting 8 kids. And so those are programs for kids who have had significant challenges managing in the regular school system and need additional mental health support, but also just need that individualized attention so that they can experience more success in school. And then we have a residential treatment program for adolescent girls. And then we also have an intensive in-home treatment program. So we, for families who have kids with complex mental health issues, and often there are generational issues that have challenged families, and they're just not doing as well as they would like to be doing. We're able to do work with them in the family home. So really see where the kid is and how they're managing, and support the parents and support the child. Usually we're working mostly with teenagers in this program. And this is kind of a newer program for us. It actually just launched in January. And then, of course, we had a pandemic hit mid-March. So they had to pivot very quickly to doing a different type of service because they obviously couldn't go into people's homes. But it's really a rich program and offers a lovely alternative to children having to go into residential treatment.
That's amazing. I can't believe the number of programs that you run out of, and I know the main office. I don't know the other locations, but that's just an amazing amount of support that you provide for children and and here's actually a question that I feel like the George Hull Center takes a different approach, and maybe I'm wrong, but I always feel like you take a holistic approach, including the family, that when possible, I guess, it's always taking the bigger picture and understanding that nobody lives and survives in isolation. Can you talk to that a little bit more?
Yeah, you said that really well, actually. I mean, that is definitely our philosophy. We're the George Hull Center for Children and Families. And we know that when kids are struggling, whether they're teenagers or little kids, they do live in a family, and families can manage to support their kids in different ways. And if they're not involved with their treatment, it's very difficult to affect, long-standing change. That isn't to say that we won't work with kids who don't have a family, but even if a child comes to us, or it would in most cases be a teenager who is really isolated from their family, we will try to find some sort of support for them, some kind of family alternative or a different way of defining family, so that we can work with them in the context of something, so that they have some hope. It is we're also very fortunate at the George Hull Center to have psychiatry on staff. So we have a really multidisciplinary approach. We have social workers, psychology, we have psychiatrists, we have child and youth workers, early childhood educators. So there's a lot of different, and speech and language pathologists, just a lot of different lenses from which we can view the child and their family, or the youth and their family, and that is really just gives us a different, just a really whole picture of who this person is.
First off, I just love the fact that you use the word hope, because I think for all of us, especially right now, we were talking about social media on the GenWell Project, and we're going to start sharing some weekly photos of our past GenWell projects. And the reason we want to do that is to remind people that we will get back to hugs and high fives and fist pumps and, gathering with our family and closest friends and neighbors, because it's important that we remember that this isn't the end. This may be the start of the new beginning and the new normal, but we will get back to probably one of the most important things in all of our lives, which is connecting with the people that we love the most and who give us hope and who brighter day ahead.
Yeah, I totally agree with you.
So, Susan, we talked a little bit about our parenting, challenges, or what we're doing to cope with the changes. Tell me what you think COVID-19 has done to, in many different ways, the impact COVID-19 is having on parents and families out there, whether they're struggling with some mental health issues, but maybe even just families that are just struggling, because we're in, as you said, none of us have been through this before. This is the closest thing to our war, which many of our grandparents would have experienced it in some way, shape, or form. But it's even unique to war because there is no enemy. We're all in this together. So
Yeah.
tell me your thoughts on, what are the struggles that they're seeing? And then I really want to get into, George Hull, what have you guys kind of implemented to support the people going through that you're seeing? So, initially, what do you think the additional challenges that people are facing right now?
Well, I mean, I think that it's different for everyone, of course. And it's interesting. I mean, from a mental health perspective, we're seeing different responses from kids with different diagnoses. I mean, if you are looking at children or teenagers who have had some challenges socially or experienced social anxiety, where school has been a place of challenge and difficulty, of course, those kids aren't in school right now. And so for them, there's a bit of relief in not having to deal with the challenges of a peer group. Kids who have experienced bullying are getting a reprieve from that. So some of our kids are actually getting a break from what is hard in life for them.
Wow.
And that for those kids, home is their safe place. And so they're happily cocooning away at home and doing quite well.
Can I interrupt you for 1 second?
Of course.
So what are the long-term implications? Like, yes, I get that home is a safe place, but is there a limit to that safety and the benefit of it?
Well, I mean, your guess is as good as mine. It will be interesting to see how this all shakes out when life resumes. I mean, it's going to be somewhat gradual how we all get back to life as we knew it. So I guess a lot is left to be seen. But I think for those kids, it's probably pretty good for them actually to have this break.
And I might even suggest, because and I've had many conversations with people on this, and in other conversations where people have said to me, Pete, I hate to tell you this, but I'm actually enjoying the change of pace, and the fact that, although, as I said off the top, I think I'm in more Zoom meetings and more hours of connecting digitally than I've ever been in before. But I think there's a lot of people who are saying that the whole world is kind of slowed down a bit. And so when we get to the other side of this, maybe those young kids or young people who struggle with, maybe it was the pace, the pressure, the competitiveness of the world that they were in. And maybe if we become a little more empathetic, more caring, and more compassionate for one another, that their re-entry to life may be a little easier.
Well, let's hope. Yeah. I mean, I think that for kids who have real social anxiety and don't manage well in new circumstances, those kids might continue to find it very challenging when they return to school, for example, and having to interface with the public, especially after a real break from that, because exposure is generally how we work with that type of anxiety. And then, of course, you have kids that feel very isolated and are really struggling with their mental health while they're in this, kind of, sorry, that's my dog barking because I stopped patting her.
This is the reality of the world now, Susan.
I know.
We have dogs and kids coming into our conversations.
Into our workspaces.
It's all beautiful.
My child is way more obedient than my dog. I'll tell you
that. Are you allowed to say that?
Well, I think my daughter would agree.
Yeah.
The dog is very poor, and she doesn't understand. So,
I love it.
But at any rate, I think that there are lots of kids who are really struggling with their mental health right now, and that the social isolation is really challenging, and a lot of people are in really dire situations. I mean, the folks who are able to complain about work invading their personal lives, we're really the lucky ones in all of this. There are a lot of people who are out of work, as you know, and as everyone knows. But the impact on the children in those families is quite significant. They're very worried and very scared, and often for very good reason. And so those are situations that are a bit heartbreaking and are very difficult to really address from a mental health perspective, because they go much further beyond what we can do. But we do have some, some strategies for families that are dealing with stress in their homes and with their kids. And interestingly, I mean, this whole concept of connected conversations is really applicable, because what we know is that social connectedness is really the greatest buffer to times of stress and distress. And so the more socially connected people can remain, the better it's going to be for them, both kids and adults. And I would say in the situation of families, that parents are obviously the lead, and they say that the roof, the house leaks from the roof, and so for parents, I guess our biggest advice is to stay calm and to stay regulated. And the kind of concept of co-regulation is one that is really helpful in parenting. I think about when you have a 2-year-old that's having a temper tantrum. You don't join in with the temper tantrum. You generally stay pretty calm. And generally they are able to find their way to that. That's part of what they're learning when they're having their temper tantrum, is that these feelings are just bigger than they are, and they don't know how to manage them. And they learn it from you. You co-regulate with them. You bring down their stress and anxiety and their worry, and you help model that. With teenagers, it's really hard to co-regulate a teenager in the same way, because they can really piss you off sometimes. They can do things that are so frustrating, and they know our buttons so well. So it takes a lot more, I guess, grit and kind of perseverance to be able to do that with a teen. But it's equally as important with a teenager to co-regulate as it is with a small toddler who's having a temper tantrum. So if you're able to keep that in mind, that staying calm and regulated yourself is going to be a huge benefit to the entire family. That's one of the things that we talk a lot about.
Susan, I'm almost emotional as I listen to you talk about, how fortunate we are to complain about work and working from home, and that the dog's around, or that, our kids are getting in the way. Because one of the things I do think is happening right now is a greater awareness of those who are struggling. When you see the lineups on the news at food banks, and in the US, you see, 1,000 people in a Walmart parking lot, or a parking lot somewhere, picking up some food bank food. You start to realize, having, again, I'm a big Maslow's hierarchy proponent, which is food, water, shelter, safety, security. How wonderful are you? Right now, I think we're all recognizing, hey, what did I need? Because I think a lot of us might have been living beyond our needs. And I think this has done a great service, if I can say that, because I know that's a tough thing for, because some people are going through great pains and great anxiety and great stress. There is silver linings, but it's across the spectrum. For some people, it is about the awareness of what they really needed, and maybe they were living beyond their means. And for others, it's, hey, how can we raise the consciousness and support those who may not be as fortunate as us?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I can't thank you enough. And Carrie Goulet from StopConcussions.com, who's also another youth mental health advocate and has a program called Connected, would be fully aligned with your comments about the need for human connection in the world. Obviously, the GenWell Project is, based on that whole premise, which is none of us were ever educated on this. Most of us actually are just waking up to the fact, because when you and I were kids, we came home from school, there was 10 kids on the street every day to play hide and seek, kick the can, ball hockey, basketball. And today those kids aren't there for them. And, I live on a street where there's probably 20 kids. I think 2 kids go to the school that's right across the street, and the other 18 kids go to schools outside of
all around the
exactly. And it's
you don't know your own community in the same way.
It's so crazy. And that's what the premise of the GenWell is, hey, let's give those occasions a couple times a year where even if you don't go to school together, you at least know each other, because you walk by each other every day, you know, as you're heading to the corner store, or, you know, going to get groceries, or riding your bike. You know, these are important things. And I'm thrilled to hear you say that, as we've heard from many of the psychologists and psychiatrists that have been on, that, you know, hey, social connection right now, time of stress, you're struggling, you're trying to co-regulate. The greatest thing you can probably do is get on the phone to a friend, a family member, a colleague, somebody you have faith and trust with, and just say, man, I am struggling.
Yeah.
Can we chat this thing out?
Yeah, it is really important as a parent that you look after yourself. I know that analogy of the oxygen mask in the airplane gets used lots, but it's a good one to think about, that, you know, if you're not looking after yourself and your own emotional, mental health needs, that really does impact your kids. The best thing you can do is well, one of the best things you can do is make sure that you're all right, so that you're in the best space possible to deal with the challenges that are coming your way with your kids. And we know that there are many of them. So, yeah.
So has George Hull, have you seen an increase of outreach? Have you added any programs? Is there anything that you've been able to implement in the 8 weeks since this has started? Or frankly, actually, is it really just the same principles, just reminding people when they're in a time of crisis about those same key priorities that you probably did, other than the fact that, as you mentioned earlier, the kids aren't in school, so now they're at home all the time, and it's a much more intense time for some families. But are the principles the same on supporting families, kids, and parents?
I think so. I mean, we had to pivot pretty quickly to offering services online.
Yeah.
So, you know, there are always some IT kinks with that. We had to make sure that we had a platform that was secure, because we're a Ministry of Health funded service. And so we need to protect people's personal health information. So we couldn't be just on, like, we couldn't be on Zoom where people are bombing in with their, you know, whatever. We needed to make sure that these were secure sessions, and even just preparing people for an online session is different. You know, reminding them that they might want to get to a private space. Can they go to a room where there aren't other people around? If it's the entire family, is there enough space so that they can all be seen? And so, you know, there were some of those issues, and supporting families that way. And I would say, you know, for some families and kids, it's been a lifesaver, that they have been very engaged and very committed to working with us through this period of time. And for some families, they've said, you know what, we're just going to put it on pause. This is great, but this interface doesn't really work for us, and so we're going to pick up where we left off a little bit later. And so we're good with either of those scenarios, of course. We have been able to move to group programming we have the, you know, the health level of Zoom, so it's totally secure and compliant with the legislation. And we've had really quite remarkable results with that. We have a lovely group with little kids who are selective mutes. They have challenges with anxiety and speaking to people that aren't their family, and these kids they're little, like I mean, you know, kind of 5-6 years old, and they've been able to participate on Zoom group sessions for well over an hour. I mean, our facilitators are remarkable therapists who are animated and exciting and draw them out. But these kids are talking like crazy over this interface. And we couldn't have imagined that would be the way that they would respond. So, you know, as you say, there have been silver linings. And certainly I think that for us, there have been a few. It's really pushed us into this new world of online service delivery or virtual service delivery, which I think we were all a bit reticent about initially, and it's actually not so bad. And some people even prefer it. I've had some lovely stories from clinicians who have been working with kids who just haven't been able to talk about some things that are really really challenging for them in face-to-face therapy, and for some reason this interface feels a lot more safe for them, and so they've been able to have conversations with their clinicians that, you know, in a year of therapy they weren't able to do. So, you know, and able to bring in their parents ultimately into sessions to be able to share that with their parents. So you know, I guess for us the challenge, as we've been given the green light to start seeing people face to face again, is what is it from this? What learning can we take from this experience that we can now bring forward? We don't want to lose any of the good things that have come with this.
I think the only thing that comes out of this, Susan, is actually helping more people, because if there's less travel time and less complexities of seeing, and broadening the and not that you're trying to broaden your geography, although I'm sure you're happy to help wherever possible,
sure,
based on funding. But the reality is, you know, we've gone from one extreme of all face-to-face to all digital, and we'll probably settle somewhere back in the middle, and it'll work for everybody, which is a beautiful thing.
I agree. And it's all about reducing barriers, right, to service. So.
Yeah. Okay, we've got about 10 minutes left. So now you talked about co-regulate, you talked about stay calm, you talked about I guess probably a little well, that was slightly different, but I think gratitude's a big part of the message right now. So those to me are when you're in the moment. Is there give me the three things. I'm waking up today. I've got my family. I'm trying to figure out how to, and I'll use structure because I think that's part of the answer that you're probably going to provide. But what are the three things you're going to say to a family? Like, hey, if you were going to get up today and you're trying to create an environment that's going to work, be productive. I don't know what the right words, maybe you can help me there, but what are the three things you're going to say to a parent to say, hey, here's some things you might want to think about as you set up your day or your week ahead, if we're going to be in this lockdown for another week or another month?
Yeah, well, I think that for sure, providing structure and having routine is important. We are, as humans, we tend to like that. Especially little children tend to like to know what's coming and to be, you know, to be kept in somewhat of a routine. So I think what we're learning with our teens is that they're moving slightly into their own rhythm, which is later nights and later sleeping in the morning. Which for some people is going to work better than for others. I think, though, not letting it extend too late in the day is helpful, because you can get into some challenges if you're really off kilter, just from even your physical health, but it really does impact your emotional health as well. And making sure you're eating properly, exercise. We know exercise is an incredible buffer for mental health. That you know, getting out and playing games is really important. I think for parents, you know, we would want to say at the George Hull Center, accept all the feelings that your kids are showing you, that you're not there necessarily to fix it all the time. We work from a model that was developed by Dr. Daniel Hughes in the United States called DDP, dyadic developmental psychotherapy. I won't expect you to remember that, but he uses something that he calls PACE, and we have adopted it, of course, at the George Hull Center as well. And it stands for playfulness, acceptance, curiosity, and empathy. And so if you can hold those things, if you can be playful with your kid, even when they're falling apart, if you can find a way to, you know, inject some humor, insensitive humor. I mean, not, you have to gauge your room. And acceptance is a big one. And sometimes parents forget this. You know, I mean, our kids come to us with their challenges and their sadness and all of these big feelings, and we just want to fix them because it feels like that's what you should be able to do. And often we can't fix them, actually, but we can hear them and listen to them and allow them just to feel them and be totally understanding of what this experience is, and try to understand how they're feeling, not without saying, well, have you tried this or have you tried that? Just sitting with them through the feelings. That works with everybody, actually, all people of all ages, but it's something we often forget with kids. And then curiosity, I think just being really interested in what it is that they're telling you. Be as curious as you can. I think that is, it's a wonderful strategy in any relationship development. I mean, this being kind of paceful is great for all relationships, but parenting is the one that we're talking about. Yeah. And then empathy. I mean, understanding that this is a really crappy situation and that it doesn't matter that somebody has it worse down the street or in a different city or whatever. What your child is coming to you with is really their experience, and that we need to be really empathic about what that's like for them. So that's kind of a frame of reference I think that people can carry with them.
I love that. And I'm going to ask you where people can find out more about George Hull. But I do think that, the fact we're all going through this at the same time, as we touched on a little bit earlier, when you think about the empathy that I believe is being created in the world around us right now, is because when you walk down the street and you see somebody, you recognize they're going through the same situation you are. They're locked in their home. And whether it's isolation or cabin fever or work stress or financial stress or kid stress, or, you pick the stress, there's something going on. And I think we're all, and there have been the exceptions. I've experienced it myself where, people are lashing out. And I think that's a reaction to the stress. But I hope that at the end of this, we can all realize that we're all human, that we all go through challenges, whether you're a kid or an adult, and that really we can all look out for one another. And Dr. Robert Waldinger, who you probably know of down at Harvard, who leads the happiness study, does a Tuesday afternoon kitchen table conversation. And on the first one a few weeks back, he just said, just cut each other some slack right now, because it ain't easy for anybody. And I thought that was really powerful.
Yeah, I think it's good. And I think just if I can say one more thing, it would be that, school is feels like such a critical thing for our kids. And I will say that it's not going to go that well at home. I mean, some kids are going to be really motivated, some are not. I wouldn't make it the big issue of your family life. I think there are a lot more important things. Your mental health is more important than your schooling, ultimately, and currently. And so, if it's big fights about school, or if it's big depression about school, I would find a way to let that one go a bit and focus more on just listening and being attuned and being connected and doing things together. Whether it's, you can slide math into baking, into building something in the backyard. There's lots of ways to do that. You can build reading into reading out loud to your child or reading together. There are lots of ways to keep them, in a world of learning without it being the official school curriculum.
Instagram handles are always difficult, but I dig. Ban Dilly just said, hey, such great advice. Thank you very much. And I'll echo something that a neighbor who's a teacher up the street said to me. Look, everybody's been complaining about, we've taken out physical activity from schools. We've taken out creative arts, like arts and crafts, music, and different things. Yeah. The comment she made to me, which gave me a lot of, because I take my little guy out, we go for bike rides and ball hockey and this, that, and the other. And she said, look, focus on the things that you want the school to do, because he'll get back to the school eventually, and they'll get back to the reading, writing, and arithmetic. If what you really love to do and what you think you'll build the greatest bond with your child is doing all the other stuff, then spend this time connecting with your kid on the things that you love to do and they can build a passion for. And I just was like, wow, that's rocket science.
And you're building your mental health at the same time, and resilience. These are all really important strategies to be able to have in your back pocket as a kid growing up, right?
Yeah.
That you can. I mean, our kids are going to remember this.
Yeah.
This will be something that stays with them throughout their life. Just like, my parents were very affected by World War II, right? That was a huge, significant thing in their life, and so we have an opportunity here to really connect with our kids and grow our connection.
I love it. So Susan, people want to find out more about George Hull, about your services, get some information about DDP.
Yeah. DDP.
Where can they go to find out more?
They can look on our website. So if you just look up the George Hull Center, we have a website. And I would put out that there are many children's mental health centers in Toronto, and a really great way to get them is through Mental Health TO, MHTO. And I can even give you a phone number for that.
If you give us all that information, we'll put it on a follow-up post that we'll be putting out sometime tomorrow. That'd be great.
All right. I'll follow up with an email to you, and so that you've got all that.
Awesome.
And if people need services, if they contact MHTO, that will connect them with someone who will then put them in touch with the Children's Mental Health Center that's most convenient to where they live.
That's awesome. And so we asked the same last question to everybody, Susan. When this is all over, what's the one thing that you want to do?
Oh gosh, one thing. Well, I'm just looking forward to having all my family and friends over, well, maybe we'll have a big GenWell weekend or something. Maybe you'll have to have a special GenWell weekend when the kind of gates are officially lifted.
We've already created the logo, so we're ready to go.
Well, I'll be registering. How's that?
The Global Human Connection Day, which I think is something. You know, the research, IMI Research, is one of our in-kind partners, has been doing weekly research, and of the 17 grouped answers, 16 of them directly relate to spending time with other people as to what people are missing most. So I think you're not alone in wanting to get together with your friends and family. So Susan, thank you for this conversation. Honestly, I was emotional half the time, because I just think you have empathy for people that are going through challenging times. And I love the fact that we can both admit, hey, we're fortunate. We've got a roof, we've got food, we've got safety and security. And so many people out there don't right now. And so thanks for your information. Thanks for your knowledge. And thank you for what you do at the George Hull Center, because I think it's really important stuff and important work that people need, especially during these times of crisis.
Well, my pleasure. Thanks for being interested.
Always interested.
And for all that you do, Pete. I think it's a terrific organization. The GenWell Project is a really great message for all of us.
Thank you, my friend. All right. Have yourself an amazing weekend as best you can under the circumstances.
Yeah, but, right back at you.
As we like to say, stay safe, stay healthy, and stay connected.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Pete.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye for now.